Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to do a video about some logging and sawmill tools, and specifically the tools made by Peavey Manufacturing Company, which is up in Eddington, Maine. And if the name Peavey sounds familiar to you, it's because they're the company that developed the original logging tool that we know as a Peavey. That was developed by Joseph Peavey back in 1857. And he was an inventor type guy up in Maine, and he happened to see folks moving logs out on the river, struggling to move the logs around as they floated them downstream in the river, and he came up with the idea for this well-known logging tool that became known as a Peavey, and then his company formed, and he went on to make all sorts of other logging tools over the years. They're still in business, well over 150 years later, which is really remarkable. It's a very old-fashioned company. They've basically got their own blacksmith shop with a forge for the steel components and the iron components of their tools. They have their own sawmill where they're sawing high-grade white ash logs for the handles of their tools, and so it's a pretty remarkable company. I think it's worth doing a story about and a video about. And if you've seen my videos in the past, I don't really endorse any companies. I'm never paid by any companies to do sponsor type work or anything, but in this case, to me, this is a good old-fashioned American company still making some really good logging tools here in the USA, and I felt like it was great opportunity to help promote them and tell other people about their work. And so I want to start off with one of the first tools I bought from them, and this is probably 20 years old now. This is a Cant Hook. And a Cant Hook is basically a variation on the Peavey. And by the way, there's about 4 or 5 different names for these tools and their variations. The original Peavey looked much like this, but it had a pointed spike on the end, but it still had this swinging hook. Sometimes we call that the dog. And the idea is, you get this around a log, bite into it, and you can roll the log. Well, the original Peavey with that spike also allowed people to push logs and move them around, like if they were out on a river or in other situations, say in a log yard. So Peavey was the original tool with the spike. The Cant Hook is an evolution of that, where it has a little bit of I'd call this a chisel point right here to help it bite onto logs, and this is primarily for rolling them. Before I ever had a sawmill or even worked with a sawmill, I used this Cant Hook out when I was doing timbering operations, just to move logs around and roll them. You just get so much more leverage with this type of tool that it really saves your back, and it's very practical to have. And so this is the Cant Hook. There's another variation of this called a timberjack, which has a stand down here, and the idea with the timberjack is you can bite onto a log, roll it up, and prop it on the stand attached to the tool, so that if you want to make cuts with your chainsaw, you can keep your chain and your bar out of the dirt. And then there's one last variation. I've never actually handled one, but it's called the Mill Favorite, and it's basically a further evolution of this Cant Hook design with a little bit different tip, a little bit different chisel point, that's really meant for handling logs on a sawmill. It doesn't bite in as hard, and so you can turn logs and quickly release the tool, as opposed to the Cant Hook, which sometimes can bite and then hang up and you got to jiggle it loose. And so this is the Cant Hook, and this is really a classic example of all their tools. You got a US white ash handle, very, very high quality wood. I mean, I'm looking at the grain, and again, this is 20 years old. I store this outside. It's still in beautiful shape. It's very, very strong. So it's got the real nice white ash handle, and if you look at the work up here at the tip, I would call this high quality blacksmith, maybe modern blacksmith work, between the forming and the welding and the shaping of this. It's just really high quality work, but it has that handmade look to it, and that handmade touch. And so that's the Cant Hook. One of their other tools I have here is called a bark spud. And this is really a quick, efficient way to chip the bark off of a log. You basically just work it like this, or you can pull it towards you or push it away from you. A lot of it depends on what kind of positioning and how you're holding your log when you're working it, but I tend to do a lot of work this way with a bark spud. So it's got a very sharp pointed, kind of a curved tip. It's not really a chisel. It's just really a sharp chisel-shaped tip that's really good for chipping off bark and cleaning up logs to get through the bark and the cambium and all the other layers between the bark and the wood. If you've ever seen hand-hewn beams or just very rustic posts and beams or poles, you can tell when a bark spud was used because you'll just see lots of little scallops. And I'll flash up a picture as we're talking to show. One time I just made a gate post for a farm gate and used the bark spud to take the bark off, and it looked beautiful. And I ended up putting a wood sealer on it just because it looked so nice. And so this is a great little tool. A lot of people will try to use what's known as a draw shave or a draw knife to pull the bark off a log, and that's more of a woodworking tool. That's more of a tool made for post sawmill operations. If you're looking for something to knock the bark off or to shape a log before or during sawmill operations, really the bark spud is the tool of choice. So these are the two tools I have from Peavey, but they make everything. And I've named the different variations of the Peavey and the Cant Hook. They make picaroons, they make draw shaves, shingle tools, shingle throws, pulp hooks, just all kinds of stuff you can expect to need for logging operations. And so I wanted to give them a plug. I'll put a screenshot of their website and slide through some of their different tools when I edit this video and put it together, so you will have seen probably some of those overlaid in previous parts of this video. But they're up in Eddington, Maine. I'll put a link to their website down below in the description and flash here on the screen. I highly encourage you to check them out if you need any sort of logging tools. I just think you can't beat a good old-fashioned USA-made logging tool from Peavey Manufacturing Company. Thanks for watching.